So it's another Saturday night. The days and nights are relentlessly passing. Today I was out doing a lot of shopping with Anagarika Jack, and we heard a short reflection this morning from Ajahn Gai, encapsulating the word aton in Thai, which is patient endurance in English. That's a possible translation. And so I think the intention this morning when we went out was we're finishing off a kuti in Humboldt, where we will potentially have a new monastery someday. It's going to hopefully be offered to us, but it's not sure when because the owner still lives there. And so, but she's been very gracious, and she built a kuti, the second kuti on her land. And so Ajahn Yaniko is going to spend part of his retreat up there and finish off the kuti. So he asked me to get materials for it. And I set off today with Anagarika Jack. Okay, well, maybe we'll be a little bit late for the meal. I think we ended up getting back around 3:30. And yeah, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a particularly stressful day, but it was tedious. I was going to different hardware stores and dealing with disappointment and, either the materials weren't there or they were broken or they took a long time to get. So it was, it was a very good day to work on patient endurance. And I was reflecting on that in terms of an early teaching that Lumpur gave me when I was a Samanera. And I've told this story before, but it occurred, we used to do sits up at the ordination platform up at the top there. We do them in the early morning and the evening. And anyway, there were some grass mats. We didn't have many of these mats. We didn't have as many requisites as we do today. And so there was only enough mats of these for the bhikkhus. And so I was sitting on like a grass mat, and I would sit on two of them. And one of the monks came up to me and said, "Oh, you shouldn't sit on two of them because that's it's in terms of just our vinaya and our standard of what you should sit on. You just use one." Well, unfortunately, I didn't like that answer, so I decided to ask Lumpur, and then chose the absolute worst time to do that, which was before the blessing of the meal. And I asked him if this was, this is what was true. Is this the case? Is this, in other words, do I have to do this? Can I get my two mats? And he said, "Well, if that's what people are talking about, it's really not worth saying anything." And of course, I thought, well, that doesn't give me a good answer. Like, I want an answer. Come on, let me get my two mats. But I said, okay, I'll think about that, or I'll contemplate that. But then after the meal, he called me over, and there were some times he's giving me some very strong feedback, but this was the first time, and he was actually gone a year during my time as an Anagarika. So he had just returned. And as I've mentioned before, I just had this perception, oh, Lumpur is like a teddy bear. He's so nice and sweet, and there's not much in him that would be very strong or kind of, he's just so forgiving. And all those things are true, but he does it when it's appropriate. And when it's appropriate to give some strong advice, he will do so. And so in that moment, I found out that was the case. And he let me know that basically that my question wasn't appropriate, the time wasn't appropriate, time and place, but also he said that something even more important that I never forgot, and I've used continually to question myself, even though it continues to come up for me. He said that this life that we seek is not a life of comfort. It is not a life of seeking comfort. And if that is what one does in terms of becoming a monastic, it's essentially a very big problem. And then he left it at that. And I had to really think about that, and I've continued to think about that, as I said, over many years. What does that mean, that's seeking comfort? And I'm just asking that as a question for all of you, How is it that we try to make our lives comfortable, that we try to take the easy way out, that we sometimes know when we need to rise up, we need to challenge ourselves, we need to push ourselves, but we don't. And instead, we just kind of think to ourselves, tomorrow, or not now. And so it's very much the Buddha's encouragement towards us with right effort. How can we use right effort, and how can we not fall into a continual sense of seeking comfort in one way or another? And it is a deluding process. It's coming from delusion, because often we don't see it. It can just be something that creeps in, and all of a sudden we're seeking out more and more comfort in our life, rather than pushing ourselves towards the Buddhist teachings on really understanding, understanding the Dhamma, understanding what he says was the fundamental truths of our existence, that we suffer, and we suffer because of desire, and we can end that suffering if we learn how to end unwholesome desire. And so it's up to each one of us, the potential we have to do this. And it's not something to use as something to judge ourselves with, to kind of beat ourselves up about. If we find that, sometimes people go the opposite direction, and so they push themselves too hard. So the Buddha was always talking about the middle, the right way to do this. And so as I was reflecting upon it today, it was, there was all kinds of things coming up in my mind. This day is getting on. It's so long. It's like, it's sort of bargaining. When am I going to find comfort here? Or what's going to happen? When is this going to end? Can I predict the ending? And over again, there were, these minor challenges that came up. So the main thing that we went out to go buy, to purchase, which was a very large amount of wood, he said, "Oh, we don't have it." I said, but it says here, it says you have 180 boards. He said, "No, that's just wrong. Sorry, it's not here." So not a big deal. This happens all the time. Where else can we get it? Well, there really wasn't too many places to find it. So they sent me to make a special order, see if we could get it in time before Ajahn Cunda goes on his retreat. And the fellow who was helping me out is someone I knew, and he said, "Hold on a minute. I think that doesn't make sense to me." So he went around and he took some time to look, and he said, "I found them." And then there was this, this sort of relief. Oh, right, okay. Back to comfort, back to things going well, and right, things are going my way again. And I just found it interesting to kind of continue to explore that throughout the day, that sort of momentum around, like, can I get what I want? Can I feel, can I get around the challenges? Can I not have to deal with things? And also the sense of it shouldn't be this way. The main source of what I find is of dukkha. It's not supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be the way I want it. And so this is something that I think is very helpful. The reality is going out, and I think we were out for about 7-8 hours doing this, and there was a sense why, I thought it was going to be shorter. Thought we were going to get things more efficiently and easily. This would be a short job, but that's not. There's no real problem in that. I remember, before I became a monk, just working 8 hours a day. I used to also work on 12-hour shifts, and it was tiring. But that sense of rising to the challenge, or being present when there's difficulties, and an understanding like, okay, we don't have to seek the easy way out. All of these challenges that we face each day, whether they're having a difficult conversation with someone, a disagreement, these are all part of our potentials to become aware and to wake up, rather than to see them as something that we shouldn't have to deal with. Life should be easier than this. And of course, if we really start to think about how challenging life can be for many human beings on the planet, then it can be quite extreme in terms of the lives that people live and the circumstances they're in that are almost intolerable, impossible to live with. Some people being in war zones or experiencing famine. But just to think that doesn't make our own suffering disappear. So I think that the basics of what the Buddha is teaching us is to continue to fight against this sense of complacency, this sense of comfort that we seek, and also that other word with complacency. That's a very normal but often overlooked part of Buddhist practice of what can come up, what can be a major danger. So with complacency, it's like, well, this is good enough, or I'd rather not. as I've saying, rather not rise up, rather not do anything more right now. And I think for all of us, it's a good thing to contemplate where that's occurring for us. Where is there complacency in our lives? Often this is something that has to do with boredom. Boredom can come up. And then again, that's something that we might not want to have to deal with. After, I think it's like, this is my 17th vasa. So I've been at Abhayagiri on and off or actually doing the monastic thing for about 19 years. And it gets really boring sometimes. It can get really monotonous, the same thing, the meditations. Even if there is some learning going on, I was empathizing with this young woman who was here as a guest. She was just complaining. I think she was in her very early 20s. She was just saying why does it take so long? Why is it so difficult? And I just said, because it is, that's how it is. Some people have it a bit easier and the practice comes very easily for them and they have results that come quickly. But there's others, in fact, I think most people who, that's just not how it is. The practice is difficult and the results come slowly. But we don't have to lament about that, because I think most people are in that boat. But this is what we're given. This is what we have. And so we can complain about it and we can get upset about it and whine. I'm very used to that kind of notion in my head, just that kind of whining mind state. But it's not going to get us anywhere. It's not going to help us in any way. And so part of the challenge is how do we put ourselves in a situation that we're benefiting ourselves, we're learning, we're helping ourselves along the path, and it's not so excruciating. It's not like we have to burn ourselves out, but we're also keeping that edge up. There can be a feeling of okay, there's an edge here that we're kind of bumping up against, and that edge is discomfort. Are we willing to be uncomfortable? Are we willing to go a little bit more of the distance to try to understand the Dhamma? This can be something just like sitting a little bit longer than we want to sit, or it could be having a conversation with somebody when we really don't want to. It can be anything that we can push ourselves towards. And then we can see, okay, this is dukkha, this is my experience of it. What am I learning from this moment right now? I don't want to actually be talking to this person. I'd rather be wherever, somewhere else, me somewhere else happy. But what if we don't let ourselves go there? And we see that we actually are creating the suffering for ourselves, and we are making a choice in the matter. And we can turn to something more wholesome. So that's where the right effort comes in. Okay, can I be generous with my time now? Can I be allowing to be with this person who's speaking with me? And then if that occurs for us, if we're able to open up our hearts to that, then something even more wholesome can arise. We have a feeling of compassion towards another person or understanding. We might open our ears up to genuinely listening to the person and being present with them, rather than while they're talking just thinking, how can I get out of this? How can I get away? And so when we make that effort and we work against these voices that we hear telling us, no, just take the easy way out, we have so many more opportunities that open up to us. There's so many possibilities that we can have. And really those possibilities are just all of the wholesome potentials that the Buddha is teaching us to open up to. And so the choice is really ours in each moment, whatever we're doing, whether we're in the monastery and, it's easy. I found for myself, living in community and with the same people, and all of a sudden a view can develop. I have this view, it should be this way, we should be doing it this way or not. Or something comes up in a conversation and that can really rise up, that sense of having a strong opinion about something. And I notice that as soon as I back off from that, as soon as I'm able to be aware of that, then when I'm able to drop that and let go of it, there's so much less dukkha. And the opposite is exactly true, that there's so much more dukkha when I cling to having my own opinion, having a sense of how I think something should be, and that's righteous, that's the right way. And for somebody else, it's the wrong way. And so the trick is really to really see the dukkha in that, rather than hold on to our, our precious beliefs and opinions. But it's very hard because we can train ourselves to have the best opinion. We can train ourselves to always be right, and we can train ourselves to prove it and show others that they're wrong. And so this is a habit. This is unfortunately a habitual way that we might move our minds or incline our minds, which is very unfortunate, because there's no person who probably suffers more than someone who's right. And admittedly, it's hard because there's clinging around that. There's a clinging around those habits. And in order to let go of that, we have to let go of that clinging. And it's hard to do that. If you think about clinging as like, what is that? It's like grasping something very tightly. It's almost a magnetic pull. Or you think about like electricity going through a wire. It's like pulling, your hands pulled against that thing. And so it takes a bit of strength to let go. It takes a bit of our encouraging ourselves, pushing ourselves. And so when we do recognize that, though, it's very helpful to bring that to mind, bring it up with ourselves. Oh, aha, this is actually what's the better thing to do here. I wanted to say this thing to this person. I really wanted to say this thing. I knew it wasn't right. And in this time, I didn't say it. And we might deal with some regret. Oh, I wish I had said that. But if we really look at our experience, then the sort of pulling back from saying something that we would regret, it just has that greater long-term reward. And this is one of the conundrums with the practice, if we take on the Buddha's teachings, is that we don't get immediate results. So when we say something that we will regret to someone, we get immediate results. But when we learn not to do that over and over again, then the long-term gain is just, it benefits us to an incredible degree. So unfortunately, as I was talking to this younger guest, this is just one of the things we have to deal with in our practice, that it often comes with a lot of difficulty, and the results can come slowly. But as the Buddha said, it's the greatest thing that a human being can do. It's the most wonderful thing a person can do, is to practice the Dhamma and eventually realize Nibbana. And yet he also said it's the most difficult thing. So, these are just some words of encouragement, and really, I'm very happy with all the kindness that was given today by Anagarika Jack, and so that's been very uplifting for me. And just want to encourage everyone to look at that, and of course these Dhamma talks are also encouragement for myself, to just look at that complacency that can come up, and look at that tendency for comfort, that seeking comfort, seeking the easier way, not really rising up to something that's more difficult but has the greatest reward. You will.